Surgeon discovers quadruplets who amazingly resemble him. A surprising family bond revealed. Dr. Nathan Smith stood in the sterile glow of the ultrasound room, trying to shake off the heavy weight of exhaustion that clung to him like a second skin. Once the golden boy of Chicago's medical elite, he became a stranger to his own ambitions. Surrounded by high-tech machines, he wondered how many more lives he could save before he lost himself entirely. Each successful surgery came at a price measured in missed family dinners and bedtime stories. Today, however, fate would stamp its mark onto his weary soul. As he directed the probe to reveal the secret life inside Samantha, a young single mother, he was struck. Dazzling images of 4 tiny faces materialized on the monitor. Their features bore an uncanny resemblance to those of his late father, enigmatic and elusive in Nathan's fragmented memory. A tide of longing washed over him, igniting a spark of unfamiliar warmth against the coldness of his isolating existence. But how much could these children, these precious quadruplets, fill the gaping void? How could he entertain the thought of letting his heart mend amid the shrill alarms and clattering gurneys of the hospital? Yet, as he watched Samantha's anxious smile punctuated by the faint hum of the ultrasound machine, he found himself vacillating. Was he merely chasing a remnant of the connection he'd lost, or was there an authentic bond waiting to flourish? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But with each fleeting moment spent in Samantha's calming presence, an insidious clarity emerged. His responsibilities hung heavy, threatening to crush the delicate balance he hoped to find. He began attending to her struggles, learning of evictions looming like storm clouds due to unmanageable medical costs. Each conversation felt like a frayed connection back to who he used to be, and Nathan couldn't avoid the gnawing sense of helplessness. Just as they began to weave their lives together, everything unraveled. A day later, the emergency room buzzed with urgency, and Nathan's heart sank when he saw Samantha wheeled in, pale and gripping her stomach. Anxiety swelled within him. Was it even ethical to feel so personally connected to a patient? He knew the rules. Clinical distance was paramount, and yet, emotions crashed over him like relentless waves. Had he stepped too far into her world? How could he keep her safe while remaining true to his professional obligations? No time to contemplate. As he maneuvered through sterile hallways, he gazed at the quadruplet images that danced in his mind, a cascade of futures he could never predict. Racing breaths, muscle tension, they all circled back to one essential question: what would his father do in this moment of torment? He stood there, suspended between the promise of family and the relentless demands of his career. Time throbbed like a heartbeat, yet it felt eternally frozen. Would he defy convention to protect this connection, or allow his father's lessons to echo over the swell of urgency around him, sacrificing more than a career in the process? The decision weighed heavily, like an anchor pulling him deeper into an uncertain abyss, where love burgeoned alongside dread. Nathan's world exploded into chaos as the commotion of the emergency room heightened around him. He was not just a surgeon, he was now a man grappling with the emotional implications of a life possibly on the line. Samantha's life. The frantic energy of nurses and the distant echoes of patients in pain faded into a buzzing haze that consumed his mind. All he could think about were those 4 tiny faces, their futures hanging in the balance alongside their mother's. That her diagnosis came swiftly, her condition critical and requiring his immediate expertise. For the first time, he felt less like a savior and more like a participant in a cruel performance art where reality threatened to rip at the seams. He could almost hear the echoes of uncertainty whispering in his ears. Was he prepared to face this storm not just as a surgeon, but on a personal and emotional level? As the medical team surrounded him, Nathan's resolve solidified. Each member operated on instinct and training, seamlessly moving through their respective roles, but he felt a different pulse within him, a desperate need to protect. Faced with Samantha's vulnerability, he had to make choices that transcended mere medical protocol. The flicker of recognition in her eyes as he approached her bedside fueled a flicker of determination within him. He locked eyes with her, a connection deepened by fear and hope. In that moment, he released the chains of clinical detachment and chose to embrace vulnerability. "Samantha, we're going to take care of you," he said, his voice steady, his heart pounding. What came next was an orchestration of surgical manipulation and strategic thinking, but could he keep it together emotionally? Every decision he made couldn't just be guided by medical guidelines but by the dreadful sense of what losing her would mean not just for the quadruplets, but for him as well. The hours ticked by excruciatingly slow as the surgery commenced. He focused intently, allowing his mind to slip into a trance-like state where procedure met passion. Each incision felt personal, each suture laden with the promise of a future. Remnants of his father's teaching streamed through him as he invoked the values rooted deep within his upbringing: compassion, determination, and fierce loyalty. When the surgery finally concluded, it was a dance between exhilaration and despair. He stepped into the dim light of the recovery room, the adrenaline still spilling through his veins. The undercurrent of anxiety remained, though, several questions nested in his mind like dormant birds anticipating flight. Would Samantha recover? What would happen to the children? The possibilities seemed endless, most dark, few bright. The attending nurse's words snapped him back to his reality. "Dr. Smith, the quadruplets need to be monitored closely. How do you want to proceed?" Each syllable struck like a chord, resonating with the weight of his choices. As responsibilities converged upon him, Nathan felt a flicker of familiarity. This moment became more than work. A sense of shared fate enveloped him, a tapestry of his personal and professional life intricately woven together. He reached for Samantha's chart, flipping through the pages that detailed her road to recovery, a road that was now his as much as hers. This journey was not merely about healing but also about unraveling the neglected parts of himself. The fear that had once kept him locked away began to dissipate like mist in sunlight. Perhaps, in embracing this connection, he could find healing of his own. But as he turned to face the unknown, he realized this was just the beginning. There was an undeniable bond forged in the fires of adversity. What lay ahead was propelled by the need to confront a new kind of urgency, the challenge of not only healing a patient but unearthing the man he had almost forgotten he was. What was the next step he needed to take, and could he face the depths of his newfound connection when shadows from his past loomed ever larger? The sterile scent of antiseptic lingered in Nathan's nostrils as he paced the recovery room, the continuous beep of monitors serving as a heartbeat to his racing thoughts. With each moment that passed, he felt more of the weight of Samantha's struggles settle upon him. It was as if each life he had been trained to save now shared a thread with his own, intertwining warmth with the chill of responsibility. He cast a glance at the quadruplets, each nestled in their incubators, faces serene despite the surrounding turmoil. Their tiny features bore an uncanny resemblance to his own, something Nathan acknowledged in a deep corner of his mind, this familial echo forcing an introspective examination he wasn't yet ready for. "Dr. Smith?" A soft voice pulled him from his reverie. It was the nurse again, her expression keenly observant, reflecting a blend of professionalism and concern. "We've stabilized Samantha for now. You should rest." Her suggestion tugged at him. He was aware that in order to care for others, he must care for himself. Vulnerability bubbled beneath his practiced exterior, competing with his instinct to forge ahead alone. How could he step away when there was still so much at stake? "I can't think about rest right now. I need to ensure everything is in place for the kids," he replied, though the tremor in his voice betrayed the internal struggle he faced. A faint smile broke her serious demeanor. "You're a great doctor, but even superheroes need downtime to recharge." "We've got this," she reassured him, her confidence swaying him momentarily. As Nathan took a deep breath, he realized this nurse, though just a brief interaction, offered a glimpse of an elusive truth. The emotional fortress he had built was beginning to show cracks, and maybe that wasn't a weakness after all. Disentangling personal from professional responsibilities would require more than sheer willpower. It would demand a collaboration between his heart and mind. Resolutely, he stepped away from the incubators and paced the cramped corridor outside, searching for clarity. Questions swirled relentlessly. What kind of father would he be if Samantha didn't make it? The disbelief that released him into a terrifying abyss sent a shiver through him. Today had been a confrontation with his vulnerabilities, and tomorrow might call for an even deeper reckoning. Settling on a nearby bench, he replayed the day in his mind, shedding light upon his past, a childhood marred by absent parental figures, his own traumas compounding this new emotional landscape. He had always hidden behind the curtain of professionalism, believing that a wall of detachment was key to survival. But for the first time, Nathan felt the urge to dismantle it. What would it mean to embrace this vulnerability? To seek out the truth of who he was beyond the scrubs and the scalpel, and especially with these quadruplets now stitched into the fabric of his life. This realization ignited a simmering desire. He needed to explore this connection, to understand what familial ties he could begin nurturing amidst the chaos. Pain, loss, and regret began to paint a path he was eager to traverse, but shadows loomed ominously. What awaited him on this journey? He felt a rising tide of apprehension, but alongside it, a burning curiosity, the kind that spoke of hope wrapped in uncertainty. The door to the recovery room creaked open, dragging him back to the present. Samantha's attending physician stood with a serious demeanor, the weight of a new decision pressing against Nathan's chest. "We need to discuss Samantha's prognosis and next steps," she stated, the undertone of urgency sending ripples of concern racing through him. But what awaited Nathan in this discussion might rival the emotional upheaval he barely began to unravel. With each choice, he found himself deeper within a battle, not just for someone else's life, but for his own revelations. The upcoming conversation would shift the tides in his life, and Nathan felt a surge of both fear and anticipation. It was the beginning of an uncharted chapter, and he could no longer ignore the call to answer it. What truths lurked in Samantha's recovery that would pull him further into unknown territories of his heart? The atmosphere in the recovery room shifted palpably as Nathan squared his shoulders, absorbing the gravity of the physician's words. Samantha's prognosis hung over him like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash torrents of uncertainty. The sterile lights flickered above, echoing the tumult within him, casting stark shadows across the floor. He was not prepared for the forthcoming discussion. He wasn't ready for the very real possibility of needing to redefine his life's purpose. "Dr. Smith," the physician began, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Samantha is stable for now, but we have to consider the gravity of her condition. The next steps will dictate the course ahead. We need to talk about potential complications." With each word she spoke, Nathan felt an oppressive weight settle on his chest. Complications, a term that obscured 1,000 futures. He was a surgeon trained to see through the fog of uncertainty during procedures, but outside the OR, this kind of ambiguity felt insurmountable. He had always relied on a structured plan, one that allowed a sense of control, yet here he was, entirely at the mercy of fate. "What do I need to prepare myself for?" he managed to ask, his voice steadier than he felt. The physician detailed the potential outcomes, each more daunting than the last, but what struck Nathan most was the implication of the choices they'd have to make as a family. The quadruplets, those tiny beings connected to the chaos surrounding Samantha's health, became an unexpected focal point in the conversation. As the physician spoke, Nathan's thoughts turned inward. Would he truly be fit to embrace the responsibility of these children if things took a turn for the worse? The echo of his own childhood filled with instability and longing pressed heavily on him. Could he offer the unconditional love they would require? Was it right to take on the role of a father when he was still grappling with his own demons? The weight of these questions urged him to confront not just his own fears but the legacy he'd inherited. He was faced with a personal fault line, a chance to either emulate the abandonment he had experienced or to become the steady presence these children desperately needed. Every moment spent in the recovery room intensified this moral dilemma. What kind of man would he be if he couldn't step up? As the physician concluded her briefing, Nathan felt an internal shift. Clarity began to crystallize amidst the fog. He had never been one to back down from a challenge, yet parenting loomed on an entirely different horizon than surgery. "I want to be involved in every decision we make moving forward," Nathan declared, his voice stronger and laced with determination. A flicker of relief crossed the physician's face, perhaps recognizing a validation of their collaborative effort. For the first time, Nathan felt a budding purpose take root. The road ahead remained steep, filled with uncertainties, but Nathan was intent on taking each step with intention. Drawing strength from the connection he sensed with the quadruplets, he envisioned forms of nurture that extended beyond biology. Could he craft a legacy that turned his pain into compassion, his solitude into connectedness? As he walked out of the recovery room, a renewed sense of purpose began to drown out the chaos. He envisioned himself in dual roles, surgeon and father, inseparable threads woven into the fabric of existence. The emotional tumult didn't vanish. If anything, it quickened along with his heartbeat, but within it resided a flickering flame of hope. Continuing down the corridor, Nathan's thoughts spiraled forward. The next step required not only strength but also absolute commitment, necessitating a truth he had yet to uncover. What would it demand of him to truly step into his new identity? Faces of the quadruplets loomed large in his mind, their innocence demanding his protection that he needed to prepare for what lay ahead, both the heartache and the potential for growth. The journey promised revelations about himself and his ability to embrace vulnerability as strength. As Nathan's resolve solidified, a wrenching truth seized him. The path to understanding his newfound family would lead through complex emotional landscapes, necessitating allies and perhaps confronting ghosts from his past. What awaited him on this transformative journey? With every decision, every heartbeat, the imminent pulse of change beckoned. Nathan pondered the crossroads he stood at. What would it mean to trust not just his medical training but also his capacity to love? The realization struck him: facing his own truths was only the prelude to gaining what he truly sought. The moment of revelation fast approached, and Nathan sensed, deep within, that the heart's echo would soon manifest a call for deeper reckoning. Nathan leaned against the cool metal railing outside the recovery room, taking a moment to gather himself. His heart pulsed a rapid rhythm, echoing the chaotic flood of thoughts that threatened to overwhelm him. The decision to engage fully in his role, not as just a surgeon but as a father, felt monumental yet terrifying. He inhaled deeply, the sterile scent of the hospital mingling with the hint of antiseptic, grounding him in this stark reality. As he walked through the unfamiliar corridors toward the hospital's family room, he felt the burden of his self-imposed duality. He was a man split between his vocation and his emerging identity as a father, each demanding his attention yet pulling him in different directions. In the fog of his professional life, he had built a shield around his emotions. Now, it had begun to crack under the weight of familial responsibility. His surgical training prepared him for precision and logic, but navigating the emotional labyrinth of fatherhood was a different beast altogether. The family room was bathed in a warm glow, a stark contrast to the clinical severity of the rest of the hospital. He stepped inside and found himself surrounded by concerned faces, friends and family members who had come to offer support. As he stood in their midst, he felt a surge of gratitude but also an overwhelming sense of isolation. It was one thing to operate on a patient, it was quite another to be emotionally present for a family in crisis, especially when his own stability was precarious. "Nate, how are you holding up?" Sarah, his childhood friend, broke the uncomfortable silence. Her concern was palpable, and he appreciated her effort to draw him into the moment. I'm navigating," he responded, the words feeling insufficient. Here he was, facing the unfathomable, not just Samantha's health but also the unknown futures of the quadruplets, who would rely on him. "You know we're here for you, right?" Sarah's voice was steady, a lifeline being tossed. Nathan nodded but felt the gnawing fear of inadequacy. Would he really be capable of offering these children the love he had craved yet struggled to understand? The echoes of his childhood reminded him of the father he had never had, conjuring images that felt like mirrors reflecting his potential failures. Determination surged within him. Perhaps this was the clarion call he had needed. The quadruplets were his chance to rewrite the narrative of his life. They would not inherit his abandonment, they would receive a father willing to grapple with love, flaws, and all. But it required confronting deeper personal truths, not just the fear of failure but also his potential for success. "I've decided I'll be involved in all decisions regarding Samantha and the babies," he declared, feeling slightly more grounded with each word. The clarity he had found earlier resurfaced, prompting his voice to strengthen. Several heads nodded in approval, and Nathan noticed a glimmer of pride in Sarah's eyes. It felt good to say it aloud, to set a course amidst the tumult. He was adamant about not being the ghost that haunted these children. He would stand tall and face whatever trials lay ahead. As the discussions turned to logistics and medical updates, his mind, surprisingly, shifted to practicalities. None of this would be easy, but he found unexpected solace in planning, an echo of his surgical mindset. Maybe navigating fatherhood could be a series of deliberate steps, strategies he could execute with care. The thought sparked an idea. What if he created a plan, a roadmap? He could leverage his skills as a surgeon, prepare for the potential complications, establish support networks, and anticipate challenges. Each element would serve as a building block to not only ensure Samantha's wellness but to grow into the father he envisioned. Yet, amid this newfound resolve, an unsettling truth lingered. Would he have the emotional bandwidth to face the ghosts of his past while cultivating a future for the quadruplets? Each choice he made would demand not only strategic foresight but also emotional bravery. As the meeting closed, Nathan felt a tightening in his chest. The weight of this journey was far from over. Clarity was only the beginning. He had yet to fully confront his own feelings of fear and doubt. They lingered like shadows, waiting to be faced. What awaited him as he forged ahead? Would his determined vision of fatherhood manifest amidst the emotional turmoil that threatened to disrupt it? Nathan steeled himself. He needed to dig deeper. The next phase beckoned, and he sensed the profound personal confrontation that lay just ahead. It was time to unearth not just his fears but also the strength hidden beneath. The looming question pulsed in his mind: could he convert his uncertainty into a compass that would guide him through this uncharted territory? It was a truth he would soon have to answer, one way or another. Nathan paced the family room, the rhythmic oscillation of his footsteps a stark contrast to the cacophony of blaring hospital equipment outside. Each step brought forth a mix of anxiety and determination, spurring him onward while he mentally catalogued responsibilities that loomed ahead. The decision he'd just made had ignited a flicker of hope, yet it also cast doubts that churned like a tempest in his gut. Could he truly play the role of a father while tackling the intricacies of Sammy's recovery? As he stood against the mahogany, wood-paneled wall, Nathan witnessed Sarah getting up, her gesture a silent formation showing how close-knit their group had become. She engaged others in hushed conversations, implying that they were plotting a course to support him. He envied their certainty, a secure belief in their roles, while he wrestled internally with fragmented self-doubt. What would it take for him to join their ranks? The looming unanswered questions stirred disquietude. Opening the door to the possibility of fatherhood felt monumental, yet the unprocessed grief from his own upbringing swirled in the recesses of his memory, complicating the present. He clenched his fist absently, aware that the very essence of fatherhood needed more than mere presence. It demanded emotional authenticity, a quality he wrestled to harness. Impatient to wrest control over his spiraling thoughts, Nathan repositioned his focus. He pulled out his phone, let his fingers navigate through contacts until he found the familiar name of his mentor, Dr. McGregor, a seasoned surgeon with wisdom that went beyond anatomy. Nathan's resolve steeled as he dialed. He needed guidance but also an external perspective on handling the emotional terrain he was now treading. "Dr. McGregor," came the calm voice on the other end. Nathan realized how grounding it felt to hear someone who could be his anchor in chaotic waters. "Doc, I'm out of my depth. Samantha is stable, but everything else seems like a flood I can't push against," Nathan confessed, forcing the words out past the tightness in his throat. The pause from McGregor was palpable, stretching an eternity, before he responded, "You've always exceeded limits on the surgical floor, Nathan, but emotional landscapes require an entirely different approach. It's not about pushing through, it's about embracing vulnerability. I don't want to just survive through fatherhood. I want to thrive," Nathan interjected, frustration creeping into his tone. "That desire is the bedrock," McGregor acknowledged. "You know how to plan for the unpredictable outcomes in surgery. Do the same here. Anticipate the emotions that are likely to surface. A breach may feel like defeat, but even a fault line can form the basis for new growth." Nathan nodded, absorbing the insight. It felt liberating, like the first incision into a long-awaited surgery, puncturing the veil that had surrounded his apprehensions. He instinctively searched for a pen, scribbling notes, repairing bonds, not just forming new ones. Shadows of reluctance that cramped his spirit could evolve into opportunities for connection if he embraced them. With a renewed sense of clarity, he decided to face the fears head-on. Each telegraphed bubble of anxiety didn't have to mean retreat. Rather, they demanded exploration. Could he muster the bravery to engage with those memories of his own father? What wouldn't he discover if he didn't confront head-on the paralysis of emotional avoidance? This was the uncharted path he needed, one that would challenge the old Nathan, reframing him, allowing him to emerge as a new man. He hung up, invigorated yet still worried. It was one thing to plan, it was another entirely to act. Determinedly, he turned his attention back to everyone in the room. He would coordinate meetings with pediatric specialists, lay out potential care plans, and build a network of support. But he also knew he needed to arrange discussions with a therapist, who would guide him in unpacking the memories that haunted him. As Nathan began to vocalize plans and outline steps, he saw nods of affirmation around him, like a well-tuned orchestra responding to a conductor. Yet through this orchestration, visceral uncertainty knotted his gut. Would he truly find support in going beyond roleplay as a father? The realization struck him he was truly on the precipice of change, ready to confront the tumultuous well of emotions and fears that had defined him since childhood. The agony of indecision inhabited his thoughts. In navigating the demanding balance of his role, he could just as easily be marooned between his past and future. Would this claim of responsibility propel him forward, or entrap him in the complexities he reluctantly faced? His sense of urgency intensified, fueling forthcoming decisions. Again, Nathan questioned himself. Had he unlocked the potential for growth, or was he risking the potential for further isolation? The gravitational pull to confront these challenges solidified as he steeled himself for the road ahead. The time had come to face the echoes of his past and the figure he feared becoming. Would this strong foundation of resolve withstand the storm ahead? The pulse of uncertainty thrummed, as deep in his gut, a shadow loomed, threatening to surface. What emotional trials awaited on this newfound journey? Nathan took a deep breath and grounded himself in the moment. The noise of the hospital faded, and he drowned out the chaos outside with the rhythmic thrum of his heartbeat. While he was aware that he was amongst friends, their supportive presence only brought a fleeting comfort. Beneath the surface, he remained unsettled. Projecting strength to those around him felt necessary, yet the fragility of his own emotions threatened to resurface. His mind raced as he shifted toward the next step in his strategy. The immediate logistical tasks felt manageable, but the profound emotional engagement was what loomed over him like a storm cloud. He had anticipated the clinical challenges of Sammy's recovery, the medical procedures, the protocols, the sterile discussions with physicians. Those elements were familiar, a domain where he thrived. The emotional support required from him, however, was foreign territory, a terrain riddled with potential pitfalls and unexplored depths. Determined to explore this new landscape with a sense of purpose, he reached for his phone again. This time, it was to book that therapy session he had mused over. This can't be left to chance, he whispered to himself. If I want to thrive, I need to be proactive. The appointment was confirmed for the following week. As relief washed over him, he couldn't shake the feeling that it was merely the first of several steps he needed to take. He envisioned his future with Sammy and what it might require of him. Having a plan mattered, but engaging emotionally required something more profound than logistics or schedules. It would demand introspection and openness, two traits he had long viewed as weaknesses in the competitive world of medicine. The thought of unearthing memories from his childhood felt like lifting an anchor that had long kept him stationary. Nathan felt caught between the urge to protect himself from past hurts and the necessity to dismantle the barriers that had formed over the years. Could he reconcile this inner conflict? The very act of acknowledging his father's shortcomings would unveil long-repressed emotions. Yet exposing those wounds could be the key to breaking free from them. As Nathan resumed his conversation with his friends, they started discussing who among them could assist Sammy's recovery. They furiously brainstormed, and Nathan found himself energized by the potential partnerships forming around him. This collaborative effort resonated with a deep-seated need for belonging that had often eluded him. Their camaraderie was palpable, and Nathan's resolve to foster those connections solidified. "Let us not just support Sammy," he suggested, realization dawning upon him. "Let us build a community for all of us support each other as well." He saw affirming glances exchanged amongst friends, and for the first time, he felt an inkling of what true connection could look like. This was not merely a network born out of necessity, it could evolve into familial bonds he had always sought to establish but never had the courage to cultivate. As conversations flowed and plans firmed up, Nathan steered the momentum to include discussions about mental health resources, emphasizing the importance of a support network not just for Sammy but for everyone involved. He was surprised at himself. This intuitive foresight felt like a previous version of him coming alive again, compassionate and engaged, a blend of the surgeon and the father he yearned to be. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. Nathan wasn't merely planning for the immediate future, he was sculpting a vision for what it meant to connect deeply, vulnerably. The session would be here soon, but the emotional unraveling was only beginning. With each passing moment, Nathan felt the anticipation of his upcoming therapy session loom larger. Beneath the layers of daunting memories and expectations, he sensed a pulse of promise taking shape. What revelations awaited him when he finally faced those shadows? Would the emotional truths challenge the very foundation of his identity, forcing him to redefine what it meant to be both a father and a son? The answer lay in confronting the looming questions head-on, and Nathan knew he was on the brink of something transformative. As he looked at his friends, a wave of determination surged within him. He wasn't just going to be a passive participant in his life or Sammy's recovery. He was going to lead, embrace vulnerabilities, and through that, discover the depths of a connection he had long yearned for. But with this newfound clarity came the fear of failure. How could he trust himself to hold his family together when his past threatened to unravel him? The night air was thick with uncertainty as Nathan navigated the dimly lit corridors of the hospital, the fluorescent lights harsh against the backdrop of his swirling thoughts. Each step felt heavy with anticipation, a symbolic march toward an engagement he had long avoided, his therapy session. How could he approach this without knowing what lay beneath the layers he had carefully constructed? Arriving at the therapist's office, he hesitated outside the door. The room would be a mirror, reflecting all the parts of himself that he had ignored or suppressed for too long. Would he be able to bare his soul, to grapple openly with the truths of his past? The competitive, success-driven surgeon in him recoiled at the thought. Vulnerability was synonymous with weakness. But the father urging to protect and nurture his family screamed for honesty. A conflict flared within him, prompting him to question which version of himself he valued more. Taking a deep breath, Nathan stepped inside. The therapist greeted him with a warm smile and an inviting gesture. As he settled onto the couch, the familiarity of clinical environments washed over him. This space felt utterly different from the surgical room, where he took charge, but here he was an open dialogue waiting to unfold. "What brings you here today, Nathan?" the therapist asked, her voice gentle yet probing. He reflected momentarily, struggling to articulate the depth of his turmoil. "I need to figure out how to support my son during his recovery," he admitted, the words forced through a dam holding back a torrent of emotions. "But I think I can't do that while my own past is haunting me." As he spoke, he felt the familiar weight of his memories flood forth, images of a father whose love had come with conditions, the bruises left behind by words sharper than scalpels, and an unprofessional yet ingrained belief that emotional connection equated to fragility. The therapist nodded, encouraging him to dive deeper into this shadowy realm. "Let us explore how your childhood shapes your current relationships," she suggested. A swell of anxiousness pulsed through Nathan. Could uncovering these past hurts compel him to reshape his identity moving forward? He recalled instances when his father had belittled him while extolling the virtues of clinical excellence. Each time, he had isolated himself further, convinced that he had to fend for himself in a realm devoid of emotional safety. "I don't want to repeat that with Sammy. I want to be a different father," he confessed. "Being aware of those patterns is a significant step," she replied, her voice soothing yet firm. "Recognizing them enables you to break free from their grasp." Nathan absorbed her words, grappling with the possibility that healing wasn't merely an act of understanding, it involved the courage to forge new memories, moments that contradicted the cycle handed down to him. These were the moments he needed to build with Sammy a foundation rooted in love, acceptance, and communication. The session progressed, untangling fragments of his past and teasing out his feelings like threads of an intricate tapestry. Nathan began to see glimmers of hope as he confronted the daunting comparative weight of what it meant to be a father versus a son. The two roles didn't have to be at odds, they could converge if he allowed his vulnerabilities to flourish. By the time he left the office, the heaviness in his chest had lightened. Armed with newfound resolve, he understood that engaging with his emotions might not only shatter old patterns but redefine his relationship with Sammy and himself. As he returned home, a sense of urgency clawed at him. His journey had only just begun. Nathan realized that the path ahead would demand relentless commitment not only to explore his past but to stay steadfast in the present. But the deeper question loomed, would Sammy welcome this newly emerging version of Nathan, or would the shadows of Nathan's past create barriers he hadn't anticipated? With uncertainty lingering in his heart, Nathan prepared for the challenge. Ahead, knowing that it was time to not just be a protective shield for his son but also a beacon of change. The phone buzzed on his desk, a text from a friend about an upcoming discussion on mental health. Nathan read the words, mulling over how he could contribute in a meaningful way. Yet, an unfamiliar trepidation accompanied his newfound determination. What if stepping into this active role exposed even more insecurities? Could he truly lead others when he had barely begun mastering his own storm? As the shadows in his mind twined tighter around him, Nathan felt the fierce pull of the unknown, ready to delve deeper, even as fear whispered its persistent doubts. Nathan awoke the following morning, sunlight streaming through the blinds, painting the walls in warming hues of yellow. The room felt alive with possibility, a stark contrast to the darker confines of his thoughts from the previous night. He couldn't shake the feeling that the therapy session had ignited something crucial within him, a spark he needed to cultivate. His fingers brushed the phone again, contemplating that text about the mental health discussion. What would it take for him to voice his own journey in front of others? The thought sent a ripple of anxiety through his stomach, yet beneath it lay excitement. He wasn't just a surgeon today, he was a father seeking evolution, a man in pursuit of deeper connections. After breakfast, he watched Sammy engrossed in his usual Saturday cartoons. Each laugh echoing through the kitchen felt like it was cutting through Nathan's cocoon of insecurities. The boy's joy was a reminder of the bond they shared, a bond he was determined to strengthen. He made a decision. He would engage Sammy with intentionality today. They could begin exploring this journey together. "Hey, buddy," he called, grabbing a box of colorful building blocks. "How about we create something epic?" Sammy's eyes lit up, and he scrambled off the couch. "Can we build a spaceship?" "Absolutely," Nathan replied, surprised at how easily laughter rolled off his tongue. They settled on the living room floor, pieces scattered around them like scattered ideas waiting to be crafted into something meaningful. As they built, Nathan began to share bits of his childhood, small, guarded memories he carefully selected. He talked about games he played and friends he'd wished he could keep. Sammy, eyes wide with curiosity, listened intently and reflected. "I want to hear your stories, Dad," he said earnestly. "What did you do when you were my age?" Despite the instinct to protect the boy from the darker chapters, Nathan felt an urge to cultivate openness. "I got scared sometimes, especially when my dad was upset. But I learned to believe in myself, just like I want you to." It was a subtle shift, an inflection of vulnerability he had yet to fully embrace, but it felt right. Sammy nodded thoughtfully, and they continued to create, bricks snapping together, ideas flowing, barriers breaking. After a while, Sammy paused, squinting into Nathan's eyes. "Are you sad about your dad?" Nathan hesitated, the truth hung in the air, swollen with the weight of unspoken considerations. "Sometimes I think about what he didn't understand, about how he could have loved me better." Sammy nodded, his head quirking slightly. "But you're not like that, right? You love me how I am." Heart swelling with pride, Nathan realized how crucial these moments were. "Exactly, buddy. I want to make sure you always feel supported, no matter what. Their spaceship, albeit clumsily assembled, stood tall before them, a testament to their budding bond. Each block symbolized trust, an element of Nathan's renewed commitment to honesty and connection. The day pushed forward, each interaction felt lighter, more meaningful. Later, as he prepared for the mental health discussion, he let the weight of anxiety wash over him like an old friend. It felt like the leap he was about to take was more than just speaking in public, it was a commitment to himself, to Sammy, to face the parts of his past that still dared to hold sway over him. Once at the gathering, he scanned the room full of familiar faces, each carrying their own burdens masked under smiles. He marveled at the strength it took for everyone to be there. He could see it clearly now, each person confronting their pain, much like their own journey, but as the discussion started, Nathan found himself listening more than speaking. A voice inside urged him to share, to connect, yet another held him back, reminding him how raw he felt. The complexity of his internal battle deepened. Would damming up these feelings keep him tethered to the past, or would opening his mouth let forth a release he desperately needed? The safety net he had constructed from years of silence and detachment began to fray at the edges. Just as the first panelist concluded, all eyes turned expectantly toward him. The moment felt charged, the air thickening, whispering promises of revelation or regret. Would he unearth the courage to rise and speak, or would he remain encased in the shadows of uncertainty? The decision loomed like a formidable wall between his two selves, who he had been and who he aspired to become. And in that charged silence, Nathan realized he was standing at the precipice of transformation, teetering on the edge of a revelation that would either liberate or entrap him. Nathan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the anticipation in the air. This was at the moment he had both dreaded and yearned for. The room was filled with the quiet hum of expectancy, the faces of his friends and colleagues pressing against him, gently nudging him toward the unfolding moment. He had spent years constructing a facade of unyielding professionalism, where emotions were kept at bay like a tightly controlled incision, but now, the necessity for authenticity demanded he cut through the layers of protective armor. Rising from his chair, he felt a pulse of adrenaline, the swirling storm of uncertainty juxtaposed against a newfound clarity. As he stepped forward into the softly lit space at the front of the room, the images of those quadruplets, the link to the family he had never fully understood, fueled his resolve. "I've always believed that I needed to be strong, no room for weakness," Nathan began, his voice steady yet tinged with the vulnerability he was only beginning to embrace. "But the truth is, I've been running from my past, terrified of what it might reveal about me as a father." He could feel the atmosphere shift as his words, once stuck within the confines of fear, now flowed like the most delicate of sutures stitching together the truth he had long buried. "I grew up with a father who didn't show me how to love. He had expectations that overshadowed everything else. I vowed I wouldn't repeat that cycle. But in pushing my emotions down, I've let those fears become my greatest barrier." The hum of the room faded into a focused silence as each listener absorbed the weight of his honesty. Nathan glanced at his friends. Sarah's eyes glimmered with understanding, while others nodded in affirmation. He could feel their support coalescing like a safety net, giving him the courage to continue. "What I have realized is that embracing vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the bedrock of real strength. I want to be fully present for Sammy and for those quadruplets who, against all odds, have drawn me into a bond one never expected. I want them to feel cherished, to know they are more than just a second chance for me." As he spoke, he saw flashes of his past fade into the backdrop. The emotions he had once viewed as dangerous became guiding lights. This was growth, authentic, raw growth. The room was not just a space for discussion, it had transformed into a canvas where he could paint a narrative of rebirth. "I've made a commitment to step into this new chapter with intention. And I know I have to confront those echoes of my childhood if I want to change the song for my family. They deserve a father who is earnest, who shows up, not only as their protector but also as a participant, active and emotionally available." A silent swell of energy pulsed through the gathering. Nathan could sense his triumph growing. This was no longer just a vulnerable admission, it was a declaration of an empowered future. "I am participating in therapy to unpack my past, to explore the shadows that have lingered too long in the corners of my heart. I'm committed to creating a foundation of love and acceptance for my children, one that honors both my history and my hopes. Together, we will evolve, nurturing a bond that breaks the chains of loneliness and disappointment that have defined my life for far too long." He paused, taking a deep breath, the air now electric with possibility. "I challenge each of you to explore your own vulnerabilities and recognize that true strength comes from connection. Let us build a future not just through our successes but through the willingness to be open and to show support for one another. We are a community, and together, we can redefine our narratives." The room erupted into applause, an outpouring of understanding and solidarity that enveloped him as he stepped back. Nathan felt an overwhelming wave of relief wash over him, flooding not just his mind, but also his spirit. He had taken a definitive step toward engagement rather than avoidance. He had embraced his dual roles as a surgeon and a father with unwavering commitment. As the discussion continued and new voices emerged with their own stories, Nathan found comfort in the collective strength now blossoming among them. He looked toward the future not with trepidation, but as a man determined to forge connections both with his family and within the fabric of his new community. In that moment, Nathan's transformation was complete. He had outgrown the shadow of his past and, in doing so, had established a position of strength within himself and for those who would come to depend on him. It was not a solitary journey, it was inherently interwoven, collaborative, and profoundly human. This conclusion sealed an essential chapter of his life, the one where fear had been stripped bare and replaced by a resolute spirit ready to face the future. Every heartbeat echoed the promise of growth and connection, every breath a testament to the home he was building not just for himself, but for his family to flourish. Now was the moment to act on that promise. You need to subscribe now to witness Nathan's journey of transformation and the stories that inspire us to embrace our vulnerabilities. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the word about individual growth. Comment your reactions and theories about Nathan's new beginnings. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share.